All right, so today we're working on we call this our charging closet or our device closet. It's basically going to be a closet with a bunch of shelves that has a bunch of USB plugs and a bunch of 120 plugs in it. So the plan is to put all our devices in here. So between Michelle and I and the 4 kids, I think there are like 4 laptops and 6 pad type devices and 3 cell phones and camera equipment and drones and all that. So we needed a place to charge all that stuff, and so we thought this might be a perfect place to facilitate that. So we have a 20 amp dedicated 12 volt circuit that only feeds this area, and then we have a shared 120 20 amp that will feed this area plus an outside plug and our microwave. And so that should be plenty of power to charge all of our devices. So the way we built this is we are doing this bottom shelf is going to be a little bit bigger. It's I think a little over 6 inches, and then 4-inch shelves all the way up. Now as we get to the top, the curve of the roof dictates that they will not be as deep, which is fine for things like cell phones and tablets and things like that. We don't need a really deep space, so that might work out pretty well. So in the back, the plan is to put a kind of a false back so that we can fit in all of our wiring. So that for our 120, we've got these safety boxes that will fit all the way in the back, and so then we'll have a false wall that comes in about the depth of that safety box, so about 3 inches. So they won't be the full length in, but what that'll do is it'll allow our wiring to stay neat and behind kind of that false wall. So when you look in, you just see a plug in the back or maybe a USB thing in the back, and you don't see kind of a mess of wires back there. So we brought the wire comes in from underneath, and we're going to drill holes in each of the shelves to pass the wires all the way up to the top, kind of branching off as it needs. And we're also going to have a hole in front of that false wall in case, like let's say I have something up here that needs, only the first 4 on the bottom are going to have 120 volts. So if I have something up here that I need 120 volts for, I can run the wire down that little chase and just plug it into one of those, an available plug. So anyway, that's the plan. We're working on it. We like to mock things up before we go ahead and finish building it, just to see, can I reach my hand in there? Is this kind of a pain to use? Is it what I thought when we were designing it? Is it, can I use it the way we thought we were going to use it? And so we've kind of been playing with this, and we just made little temporary spacers to get the feel for what kind of space this is. And we think this is going to work, so we're going to go ahead and give it a try. So we're going to cut out the shelves, start some of the wiring and things like that, start planning all that stuff out, and we're probably going to edge band these front. These are just kind of scrap pieces that we rough cut, but we'll cut the wood exactly so that it fits, and then go ahead and start planning this out. Alright, so we are in the air conditioning, so it's pretty warm outside even at night. So anyway, we're putting these boxes, and we've decided to pre-wire them just because it might be kind of a hassle, all the way in the back. And so we've kind of decided, hey, we'll try to pre-wire them and see if that works. And so we've made up these boxes, and so they have these protective things to hold the receptacles on there. And so what we're doing is we're coming up from the bottom, and then so the first one's going to get power, and then it's going to daisy chain up and go to the second, the third, the fourth, etc. And so we're building these in, and then when we put the shelf in the back, we'll have kind of a slot cut out so that the wire can kind of just, it can just kind of have a hole for the wire to go through. So we're just wiring these fairly normally. We're using our marine grade, I think this is 12 gauge wire, and we're using some of these, they're I guess they're like a spade connector So we're crimping them on with our little crimper and putting heat shrink. So this is the marine grade heat shrink on everything, and then we're just wiring it all up. And so at the end of when you're looking in, what you'll see is just a nice clean receptacle like that. So they ended up, you know, it turns out it ends up looking pretty nice. So that's what we're doing right now, is we're just going to wire them all together, and then so we'll have a block of 4 of these, because there's going to be 4 receptacles in there. And then as we put them in, we're going to have to like scoot the other ones out of the way, get the shelf in, secure the shelf, scoot the other ones out of the way, get the shelf in, secure the shelf, etc., all the way up, you know, till the 4th one, and then we'll start working on the 12 volt.
Ready to put in our first false back with the outlet in it in here. And so this is how we're attaching them. So we've drawn a line where the back of that wall is going to sit, and we've made little braces that we've just screwed into the sides, and then that false front will screw into these, and then that way if we ever need to pull that out to access the wiring, we can just unscrew that, and the box and all the wiring and everything will be back here and hidden, and all the wires will kind of pass through from one shelf to another. So
ready? Spacers. Alright, so for the 12 volt, this is what it'll look like. There's 2 little plugs in the back. One of them is 3 amp and the other is a 2.4 amp. So at this point in time, this may change in the future, but at this point in time, that's enough to charge our iPad Pro and iPads and phones, and everything should be able to charge off of those. That may change as power requirements go up in the future. They're all being kind of set up with this fuse block. So each one of these will carry, here's the wire that it came with, and so each one will go into a different fuse, and then we'll probably cut off the fuse that it came with. It came with a little glass fuse. We probably don't need to fuse them twice, so we'll go ahead and cut that off, and we'll just fuse them here. And so these have indicator LEDs to tell us like if one of them goes out. We drilled holes, and these are 1 1/8 inch holes. And then, for example, this one is just going to take this one here, and they're pretty tight at 1 1/8. So we gotta just kind of squeeze them in there, and then line them up, And so they end up looking like that. And then here, we left these open because all the wires will come in to here and connect. All the negatives will go up here, and then each positive is fused. And so these will go through the little hole and then up to a negative, or up to a positive one for the positive cable, and then the negative cable will just come down and get screwed in there. But we'll probably put different terminals on these and get rid of this fuse, but that's how they're going to work. That's what we're working on right now.
All right, so we finished up our charging station in the closet, and one thing we are doing is we put in just some of this like gripper shelf paper. It's not shelf paper. What's this called? Shelf mat? I don't know. What is this called?
Non-slip.
Non-slip shelf paper, but it's this like really like rubbery, grippy stuff because you know, with the shelves being so close to each other and with us needing to have access to our little false walls in case we ever need to pull them out, we didn't want to put a lip in front of each of the shelves, but we also don't want like computers and iPads and stuff sliding around in there. And this pre-finished birch is awesome, but it is really slippery, and so we're hoping that that will be enough on each shelf to keep all of our devices staying put if we have them in there when we're driving. One other change that we made, kind of that we did a little differently than we originally planned, is we originally planned to have one more shelf right here that was just going to be a short shelf because of the curve of the ceiling. But once we kind of mocked that up, once we got up to that point, like the usable shelf space was only going to be a few inches, which would have been fine for us, you know, a couple cell phones, but we just decided it would be better use of our space to leave that one out, give ourselves one tall shelf, and then we just put that extra USB in the back. So the top shelf has two, well actually four, because two each, USBs, and then the next shelf is where we have our little fuse block back there, plus a USB. So that's the fuse block for all of our 12 volt things. Are each fused at 5 amps. And then, so we have 4 shelves then with the USB ports on them. And then the bottom 4 shelves all have standard 120 outlets for laptops and things like that that use the 120 chargers. Now we also have a couple wires hanging out up here, and that is because at some point we're gonna put some lighting in here. So we're gonna run just probably some LED strip lighting like up back behind all the face frames of the closet. And so we went ahead and got some wiring run for that, and that is also on our little fuse block. It runs off the same circuit. So I think we're all set on the charging station. Juan already plugged his phone in. Oh, one last thing I was gonna say is we don't really want to be like, it's not that far back. I mean, I can reach in there really easily, but we don't want to be reaching back in there all the time, especially for our, you know, our kids that are shorter and have shorter arms. So what our plan is that we'll go ahead and have charging cables that are dedicated for this space. They're not going to come in the car with us. They're not going to come out to the couch charging, you know, where we have places to charge like in the kitchen or living room. Those cables will just stay in here. They'll stay plugged in the back, and then we will just sort of like run the cords up along a sidewall and probably just kind of pin them up against there, where just the little end of it is kind of hanging out. So when we go to put a device in here, the end to plug in is kind of hanging out up here in the front, and we can just plug it in and set it down. And those cables will just stay in there. We won't take them out. And then we'll have separate cables that will be sort of our portable ones that we take in the car with us, or the kids can take in their bedrooms, or we take out in the living room, that kind of thing. But that'll just make it easier. That way we don't have cords getting lost, cords going everywhere. We're constantly having to reach back and forth to plug things in. So we're super happy with how this turned out. We were talking last night that we feel like, you know, we're trying to plan so much function into our spaces, but we just really feel like with 6 of us and all the laptops and tablets and things like that that everybody has, that we're gonna be so thankful, and this may be like one of our most prized spaces in the bus when we're done, is just that these all have a place to live, and that stuff's not going to just be sitting out everywhere. Even in our house we don't have this, and I wish we did. So we're super excited about how this turned out, and we're just going to finish off the last couple spaces in the closet. Okay, so after finishing up that charging station, we just wrapped up building out these last 2 sections of our wardrobe. Over here we just hung a closet rod, really simple, just a wooden closet rod. So that should be plenty of hanging space for us. We probably won't have a lot of hanging clothes. Most of our clothes will be folded, but you know, a few nicer outfits and for everyone, and you know, jackets or things like that. So that should be plenty of space. And then we built 4 shelves for this center section. Again, these are all adjustable, so they're just sitting on shelf pins, and they're just kind of, they're the L-shaped shelf pins, which are really nice. And we added a trim piece that sits up, I think like 3/4 of an inch to, you know, to just hold things in. So we'll have bins of things in here most likely. And so, you know, if those bins shift while we're moving, they'll get caught here and won't fall out. So we don't know exactly where we're going to position these yet, but once we actually move into the bus and know what we're putting in here, then we can adjust these and put them at the heights we wanted them. But for now, until we get the cabinet doors and the drawer fronts built, which we'll do a little bit later, the inside build of the wardrobe is done.